was able to get 1,300 in 6 weeks, including calling a fire marshal's number because the town didn't have a phone number or a city hall. And it was the deceased mayor's cell phone number that this woman answered and said, "Where'd you get this number?" And I had to say, "Well, I'm trying to make sure you get paid sales tax."
Welcome back to CZ and Friends. I'm your host, Michele Zaniti. This is the podcast where we talk with legal leaders, technologists, and operators shaping how modern companies work and scale. Today, I get to talk with two leaders of a fast-growing public company, driving the legal side and beyond. Maury Bricks is the General Counsel of ARKO Corp and GPM Investments, and he's helped guide the business through 26, yes, you heard that right, acquisitions, and a journey to being a Fortune 500 company. He started as a department of one. Today, he leads a team of more than 30 across legal risk and compliance at ARKO Group, which is the sixth largest convenience store provider in America, with stores all over the U.S. Alongside him today, we're lucky enough to talk with Michele Murray, who's the Associate General Counsel at ARKO and has become a key partner in the department's growth and a trusted leader across real estate and corporate work. Both have lived the pressure of scaling fast. They've navigated cultural change, shifting expectations, incorporating 26 companies, and today the reality of AI. Michele went from blocking AI tools and being product counsel around thinking about how the company uses it to now recommending them at CLO events where I actually met Michele. And she's one of my favorite adoption stories. Also had the opportunity to meet Maury at a dinner at the Economist Summit this spring, and immediately knew that the pair of them were a force, and it would be great to have them on the podcast. This is a conversation about what it takes to build something that lasts, about going through each individual acquisition, one foot in front of the other, and really about leadership, partnership, and what it means to shape a team over time and become a part of a company that has become, at this point, iconic. So very excited to have you. Maury and Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right. So Maury, I'd like to start with you. So you were a legal department of one. A lot of our users and customers and folks in the CZ and Friends network are that kind of scrappy legal team where either they're venture backed or they're kind of living the dream of growth. You started off one person, one laptop, fast growing business. When you look at back at those days, did you know that it was going to be something huge and just paint a picture of starting off as a department of one and what is now a Fortune 500 company?
Sure. I don't think I knew it was going to be huge. Certainly whoever was working on budgeting at the time didn't know it was be a larger department. We kind of grew by needs, by acquisition. When I brought on Michele, I went to our CEO. Michele was our second hire in legal. And I said, and he's like, "Are you sure you need someone else?" And I said, "Well, we have the work for 3 lawyers. I'm doing 2 and one's not getting done at all. So what do you think?" And we brought her in and I made her do 2.5 and then I only had to do half. So it worked out really well for me. But, we've grown over time. A lot of it's by picking up other departments and specific people from other departments and really trying to improve upon the company. One of our first growth areas was licensing. And, when you're not in acquisition mode, licensing, which by the way, for convenience stores, there can be 10, 15 licenses at a store, obviously alcohol, tobacco, business licenses, but egg handling licenses, lottery licenses to sell milk. It's a bit crazy. Sometimes you got to fill out forms in triplicate on carbon paper and get notaries. It's very crazy for a $15 bill. But accounting used to just process it like any accounts payable. And once we started doing acquisitions, we realized we needed an actual department who could confirm what were the right subsidiaries on the license. Were we meeting all the requirements? Were we not paying for old licenses that didn't exist? And grew risk in other departments or sub-departments the same way, really, as the business grew.
Wow. So from a legal standpoint, obviously the right to operate and kind of unlocking the business in that way. Each acquisition, so you've got these licenses, this regulatory thing where you're figuring out if you have the right to handle eggs or the right to sell tobacco, whatever it is. When you acquire a company, where do you even start?
From the beginning, we start with the numbers, first of all, which I don't get that involved in, but if the numbers don't play out, we don't do it at all. Then it's really learning the business, where they are, researching. We ask them what licenses they have. Then we do our own research to find out what licenses they should have. Are they operating their business the right way? Then it gets panic time where we're trying to close and do everything we need to do. Fortunately, Michele can put on various different accents, which is very helpful when you need to get a license in South Carolina and a license in Georgia. You got to put on a Southern accent and be very polite. I cannot do that. So, things I know I can't do. It's really digging in and knowing the business, right? Anytime you're in-house, you have to know your business, your business partner. And that way you can ask the questions that need to be asked that make sense. And really everything you do is not theoretical like an outside firm. It's always a risk calculus. Let's look at what we have and what we want to do about it or not do about it. I feel like Michele should be asked some questions,
Yeah, no. I'm literally I was just gonna say, so Maury talked about the human element of, he's using the accent example. But he also talked about this kind of mountain of work. So when you joined, first of all, how did Maury convince you to join? And then when you joined, did you have the equivalent sort of panic moment of oh my word, we're operating, we've got thousands of employees, many locations. What is in your headspace?
I actually was at a point in my career, I guess I'd been out of law school 7 years. I was at a technology startup, the place where they have Smart Pop and LaCroix water. And it's this big fancy, on a nice floor. And I was at a crossroads of, what do I want to do next? Where is this going? And the opportunity to apply for this particular job came about. I guess, should I tell her how I even landed on your desk, Maury?
Yeah, I mean,
Please,
look,
tell the story.
Okay,
it's an
so
important, hold on, let me just it's an important story for an in-house job because I went in-house with a client. You can look at every single ad on LinkedIn or Monster. It's not going to get you a job in-house unless you're really lucky. It's all about networks and contacts and knowing someone. That's just for people to know.
yeah, it definitely is. And so I was living in Atlanta, and I got the pleasure of going to law school in 2007 to 2010 when all of the summer jobs, it was, a great time to be in law school and to be trying to work. And so one of the jobs I took over the summer, I was helping a small law firm. Maury's mother and brother are both lawyers. And so you're just doing anything you can on top of your externships, things of that nature, just to gain legal experience. And so I assisted them, learned a ton, actually thought I wanted to go into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but then people were too poor to even file for Chapter 11 2010. So that industry in and of itself was at a standstill, and went into real estate litigation, but maintained my relationship with Maury's mom. We would have dinner once a year or every so often. And I'd gone to lunch with her, literally had just updated my resume for a same exact title at another company. And he was in Richmond, and his mom just said, "Would you ever consider moving to Richmond?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't think so." And then I got home that night and I was like, wait, why wouldn't I consider moving to Richmond? I was like, well, I'll just send my resume, so I just sent it on. And then that was probably 2 months before we ended up starting to talk. And that was when, of course, people will know, once you start looking, things just kind of appear. And it's anyone who says that's not true, it's just, when you're ready to make a next step, the universe kind of finds a way to put you somewhere where you're meant to go. And so I actually met, telephonically with all of the key players that work within our company, and flew into Richmond. Had never been here, but he said, you need to come and let us know if you want it. And so I'd never been to Richmond, flew up here, interviewed, and I was like, okay, I like it. And so I found an apartment that day and was like, okay, I guess I'm moving to Richmond. It was, some would say a rash decision, but it also was the right decision. And I did not have a background in M&A. So that is the other piece to tell other attorneys. There are skill sets, in the first couple of deals, I had to find a way to make myself valuable where, I wasn't going to be jumping in with all of the people that live in the M&A world and all of the business leaders, but I was able to find things that, hey, I can get this done, or I can help figure out what this is. And one of those involved a large acquisition where I should have never said I knew how to possibly help get licenses, but was able to get 1,300 in 6 weeks, including calling a fire marshal's number because the town didn't have a phone number or a city hall. And it was the deceased mayor's cell phone number that this woman answered and said, "Where'd you get this number?" And I had to say, "Well, I'm trying to make sure you get paid sales tax." So, I mean, this is
incredible. What a story.
Yeah, so that's
So
kind of
1,300 licenses in 8 weeks. So, and this was before AI. So literally, what did you do? So you walk in the room and they're like, all right, we're acquiring this chain of convenience stores go?
Well,
So
so
literally,
what
what
it
do
is,
you do?
so we have a director of licensing who's a machine. I mean, she is, MVP, her organization, it's insane. And so she was able to go in, we just, and it's similar to when you're doing diligence and other stuff, but you're in a spreadsheet, you're in a file. And she was like, okay, these are what I need help with. We've got to do X, Y, and Z. And it was just very pragmatic, but it also was being able to just get on the phone and say to these people, will you please tell me what I need to do? Like, in some sense, and these were Southern states, so it didn't hurt that my Southern accent could pick up a notch, but really relying on these other people. But what it did help in those early phases was that's what helped me learn the business. As much as Maury could sit me down and say, here's our business model, this is what we do, but being able to go in, learn our different entities, learn all of, because our org chart's insane. Like if you looked at it, it's like, it's consolidated some now, but it was a trial by fire, but it was also an instance where our CEO came into my office and said, will you please help? So clearly I'm not going to be the one doing all of the major, turning of the papers, but it was something I was able to do to help. And that was a good feeling to be able to participate in the first big one.
Love it. So the two of you, just even from the last 5 minutes, seem to have very different strengths. And I'm going to assume, as is the case with basically everybody, I know this. You're good lawyers. You can turn that many licenses. You can run that many acquisitions. You can support a public company. But it seems like there's an element here of like trust in how the two of you work together. So I'd love, Maury, for you to give that perspective, including of like, was it like you're thinking about that on building a team? Obviously, it's grown over time. But like, what did you see in Michele at the time? And then how have you encouraged that building of trust, assuming that you all have it amongst her and all your team?
Well, I have to trust everyone. I don't have time to check up on what they're doing. So once I send out an email, I assume it's handled. Look, I was looking for somebody. I'd put together a job description. Michele had zero of the requirements of what I thought I wanted on there, but I could tell she was smart and eager and could learn the business. And it's really the same with almost everyone we've hired who we've brought in people from finance and marketing and HR who were smart people and either being underutilized or wanted a growth and really were eager to strive and willing to learn and capable of learning. And once I know that and they're given some training, then there's really no reason not to trust them and let them do it. Each person only has time to do what they have time for. And you've got to trust your people to know what they're good at and to send things off. And the company is very good at recognizing that. I've been at other conferences where I've talked to people and they said, I'm the general counsel. People always want my voice, whatever. I said, I copy everyone else. I specifically direct them to Michele and some of our other people and say they're handling it. And sometimes I'm very clear. I'm like, I have no clue. Michelle's handling that. You can ask me the question, but I don't know. I'm going to have to go to them. They're the expert. They're the subject matter expert. We have someone else in our department, when it comes to what our insurance requirements are and what we require vendors, et cetera. I don't put that in a contract without checking from him because he maintains the master. He knows what our current standards are. That's his responsibility. So got to trust people on that.
Michele, how does it feel on the other side? What have you done to be trustworthy, and how does it affect how the team dynamic?
Well, I think part of it's caring about your work product, caring if you let someone else down, bring about, just that general motivation of, I want to do my best because that's intrinsically how I operate as a person, but also Maury is not a micromanager. So it, like in the beginning, it took a while for him to learn. First, it took me a little bit to just kind of get my feet on the ground and be like, okay, this is a big, to get everything. But once we were there, he doesn't micromanage. He's also really good about giving credit where, if someone else does something, he has no problem saying, this person found that. And we have some awesome attorneys on our team that equally, he's not trying to hold any of us back from being able to be seen as an expert in an area. So some of that, I have friends at different companies and even at a law firm where someone's, they're not giving praise for what their people are doing. And they're able to engage people in conversations that would usually only involve a certain level of people. So that's one thing. And I think the other piece of it is, I think getting your work done. I mean, just getting your work done and also being able to say, I don't know. Like, that's another big thing where it's saying, I don't know the answer to this. Now, I don't do it as much in the current times because, Maury's not as involved in the day-to-day of the operational piece with the public component of the company, and I'm sure probably too many times, but if I wasn't sure, if I wasn't sure, but if I knew I needed someone else to weigh in on something, I had no problem asking for his input. I think that's the other piece. He knows I'm going to go to him if I'm a little, this could be a problem, or what would you do in this situation?
I love that. So both of you talked about kind of a slight panic moment at the, 1,300 licenses in 6 weeks, or, the kind of like walking in and seeing the volume. Let's talk about other fun moments. So in the prep, we talked about a certified mail incident. So first of all, that's kind of funny that we're in 2025 on an AI show talking about certified mail. But secondly, tell us the story. I think we'll get some nuggets out of it, Michele.
So I didn't tell anyone this story for a while, but when I first started working for the firm where Maury's mom and brother, and there were a few other solo practitioners, it was a group of about 6 attorneys, and I was 21 years old. Like, I went to law school because I thought it was easier than getting a job. The joke was on me. I happen to really enjoy it now, but I'm 21 years old. I'm going there, and they just said, Michele, can you run this? This needs to be sent certified. And I'm sitting there, and I called my mom from the bathroom, and my parents have a business. And I said, Mom, I don't know how to send something certified. So my mom starts like reaming me out while I'm in the bathroom. She's like, I have failed you as a parent. How do you not know how to send something certified? Go to that post office and you sit there and tell the woman or the man that you don't know how to do this and ask them to show you. And I was so nervous. So I later told, it was several years later that I told his mom about that. And she still to this day gets a pretty good kick out of it. So that happened. But
Well,
Maury has a similar story.
I love it. I love it. No, it's also we had another guest on the podcast, Rebecca Fike, and she's got a blog, and she talked about when she first was a baby litigator, somebody said, you need to, create a shell of the answer, or it was an answer. It was the compliance. Somebody said, draft the compliance. And she's like, what does that even mean? And she's doing a corporate project, and it was the compliance certificate. And draft the compliance with no context means nothing. And she's like, of course, she Googles it. So that's the modern equivalent of calling your mom. But anyways, that's amazing. So, all right. So that happened. So I guess the lesson there is figure it out. Is that right?
And not to be also everyone, and this is through these acquisitions and through all of these departments, everyone is good at their job and knows something you don't know. Mm-hmm. So just because of where we sit, it doesn't mean there are things that so many employees at every level could do that I don't know how to do. And so I think having that, especially if you go in-house, having the mentality that there's something to learn from everyone, because sometimes when you're in a law firm and in other situations, it's not that it's an elevated feeling, but it is, your peer group is different. And I think one of the best parts about being in-house is getting to recognize everyone has a different skill set and seeing internal growth, helping coach people internally. But it was me having to go and basically say to the postal worker and just say, I don't know how to do this. And my mom said, it's a joke. I don't. And I can't ask my boss because I'll get fired. And so now, if someone asks me,
I love the happy ending here.
I'm like,
you're basically running the place. You're like this high level lawyer, and it's literally like this was your moment. So early career listeners, this is such an inspiration.
It can go up from there. Just know how to send a certified mail.
I love it. Maury, yours apparently involves a missing bearer bond. So I'll admit, I'm going to cry ignorant. I do not know what a bearer bond is. So first tell me, and then tell me the story.
So a bearer bond is a piece of paper worth money. And literally, if you're the bearer, you own it. If you hold it, it's yours. And if you're not holding it and you should have been holding it, you got a problem. So I'm purposely not showing my desk, and Michele made me clear off enough of my desk that it wouldn't be shown on the camera. But I tend not to keep things as organized as I should, even after I didn't learn my lesson when I was a summer associate. But for whatever reason, I had gone into the safe. I had a bearer bond. I don't know, maybe I had to draft a compliance certificate based on it or something. Who knows? And then at some point, someone asked for it back. And it took me quite a long time and frantically trying to figure out where this thing was that was worth I don't remember at this point, but definitely millions of dollars if you had it. And if you didn't, it was worth zero. It's basically like cash.
How long did it take you to find it?
I mean, I know how to block things out of my memory, so we'll just say 10 seconds, but perhaps longer than that, maybe a few hours.
I love it. Well, it's kind of like that meme that's like it's always in the last place you look. It's like, well, if you found it and kept looking, like what's the problem? So I love that story. All right. So anything in terms of like, Michele said a lot about leadership that I want to pull through. She talked about curiosity, about learning, about, kind of bringing the organization with you. How have you thought about that as ARKO has grown and GPM has grown? So it looks like, again, 26 acquisitions and more. You've been there, what, 10 years?
13 years, actually.
13 years. So that is a pace of at least 2 a year. So essentially at any one time, are you always working on an acquisition?
We are frequently looking. Yes, we're always looking at things, whether we're working on an active one or what stage we're in, depends. But we're always working on something, even if it's not an acquisition, right? People like to talk about M&A. It's the sexy thing, whatever, but there's financing, there's running the business, construction of sites, dealing with HR issues, different things that you have on a daily basis. And it's always busy in-house, no matter what. So yeah, and now I forgot your question because I have no short-term memory.
There you go.
Tell people if you didn't see me in a meeting with a legal pad, then I wasn't at the meeting. If you didn't see
Wow,
me
look at
going
that. I love that. I love the knowledge management aspect in AI. That might be a good transition point to AI. But no, I was just curious, like when you maintain that kind of pace, it almost feels like, I mean, the short-term memory thing you joke, but it almost feels like you kind of have to put that one foot in front of the other. Like, is it just like, so when you look back on the 13 years, any particular moments stand out that you're most proud of? Obviously hiring Michele, talked about that.
hiring
Anything else?
Michele, my team, being able to get the audio and video working for this podcast. I mean, those are definitely proud moments. We've done so many what other people would consider once in a lifetime transactions. It's like too many at this point. It's really about growing the team and the people we brought in to the team and finding what works for each person where they can grow. I mean, we took a person who used to be an admin and put her in compliance, and I don't even think she has a college degree, but we got her to do a certification class on anti-money laundering. And she was a little nervous to have to do that, having not been in school for, I don't know, 40 years, Michele, at
Yeah.
that point. But she was thrilled after it happened and got this certification and really looking at people and saying, what can you do? And that makes them happy. And then they want to work harder. And that's how we grow the business. Deals
We
are
al-
always going to come, but people you got to find.
And we did. So out of all those acquisitions, I will say one of our larger acquisitions, when we expanded on the wholesale side of our business. So we were able to acquire a company that had a very, not large, but compared to ours, large legal department. And it's the first deal we did with lawyers because everyone else, it was like smaller. So we kept getting all these tours, and that just means more work, less lawyers, finally. So everyone was really excited, especially in the pandemic. So we're doing this deal. And so I have a counterpart on the other side of the business, and her former boss, she now reports up to Maury, but also getting to have best practices come in from other legal teams as we've grown. So that was the biggest set of, at first we were just like, this is a head count. Yes, there's more lawyers, but then being able, we meet annually or semi-annually, but where we're able to sit and have discussions. And so even if people are involved in different sides of the business, being able to say, okay, what are the best practices? And so Maury's been able to push for that to allow us to grow from what works within other companies. Different companies have different skill sets with processes. So
I love that. So when that acquisition went through, and then like a year later, like tell us about the actual integration process. So you see, okay, they're doing these processes better or differently. You do your offsite. Any wisdom to share for others who may be in a similar situation, both on integration and on up-leveling the legal department?
I think with that acquisition, it was one thing that we noticed from the beginning, the personalities, like it was a really good fit. So it's one thing if that hadn't been the case, but we were able to see, okay, both sides were eager to integrate. So I think it was developing, Maury had met more with their head of legal. And so it was from those two coming down on the supporting attorneys, where that set the tone for the attitude of how that was going to work. And then um, it was during the pandemic, we couldn't do a lot of, I mean, there weren't team building exercises and things of that nature. But um, Maury, I don't know, you chime in on that.
Well, I think a lot of it was also respecting and recognizing the strengths of the people from the acquisition, right? A lot of times you do an acquisition and you're like, we're the best, we're the biggest. And, that added our wholesale division. We had a small wholesale division, but we were focused mainly on retail. They were more on wholesale. And we spent a lot of time. We knew they were the experts in that. We took our wholesale forms, we took their wholesale forms, we created the best of, taking from both with them as the leaders, then went out to outside counsel, the regulatory counsel, just to vet them. But really kind of taking advantage of, you had two knowledge bases and seeing what was the best, right? And, we update forms and things all the time based on our experience they had as well. It's always interesting. We deal with some other large companies and you're like, you edit their form and they're like, we don't take any changes. And I'm like, but you misspelled your name. And they're like, well, we have an every 2-year cycle where we can fix that. We don't play that game. Like, we're constantly learning things and constantly updating if it makes sense, because there was litigation and something happened, or we read about a case, or we entered, well, now, because anytime you enter a new state, like HR policies on leave have to be updated. Michelle's got to research new privacy policies. Like, dynamic is constantly changing, and you have to be open to that and take everyone's wisdom and experience and doing that. I mean, even when I went through, because I like UCC and Article 9 security interests, educating people on why we file these financing statements and what it means and what happens with the typo, because it's fun for me and educational for them.
Love that. So you mentioned partnering with outside counsel. What's your wisdom on that? Considering obviously you're doing a very high volume of deals, you're operating in a bunch of states. I'm looking at your investor, PowerPoints, and you've got, some of your acquisitions are more than, 100 locations. So how do you staff, and then how do you view your partnership with, obviously you came from a client. I'm sorry, GPM was a client. You came here. So obviously it was a deep partnership. Tell us about that.
We actually try to use outside counsel on a minimal basis, and we try to do as much in-house as possible. We're on salary, so there's no marginal cost, no matter how hard we're working. And we know our business and we know what needs to be done. And we use outside counsel as specialists if it's an HSR filing, privacy counsel, although Michele has moved more to using the AI and eliminating privacy counsel. HR, when you need someone, in a local area to respond to a complaint, although we still do that mainly in-house, but we'll just a lot of times just tap people for their specialists in very limited basis. We don't have people doing the general work because we can do that inside. But really trying to have lawyers who've worked with us on a regular basis so they know our business almost as close as we do.
Michele, anything to add on that point?
I also think we don't just work with one outside law firm. I have my environmental, I have different, we have specialists in different areas. And so it's, the relationship where we've worked with them long enough where if I send something over, I know they're going to get back to me at the earliest, just having worked over time, like with IP counsel or someone else, they don't hear from me all the time. Some know if they hear from me and it's something that's bad. Like, there are instances where it's going to turn into a lot more work, hopefully not, but just having our network, but not just putting it all in the hands of one firm. We spread it out. We maintain that list, and there'll be times, we're in some small communities. I mean, some of these places where if I have to have someone attend, I'm like, do you have a baby lawyer that wants to have, just to attend like a hearing where it's not a substantive, but being able to have a network, because these firms, a lot of these places where gas stations are, they're not major cities. So it's not where you can just have one of the top firms handle all of your work. It really does require having a lot of pillars in the fire. So if you need help on something and quickly, because usually we don't get a lot of notice before we need help.
Interesting. So Maury mentioned that you started using AI more. So of course, lucky to work with you all at GCAI, but just curious that journey. So you're responsible for privacy at the company, Michele, and I have from the prep that initially you're like, all right, no AI, let's see what's going on. Put us in that moment, and then you're thinking then, and then we can talk about the evolution.
So at that point, I was more concerned, well, with this was where I started to get nervous with AI in general. My first taste of it was looking at like bioethics, like if there were cameras and it was manipulating people's, if AI was going to create these formulas based on surveillance footage and, from an ethical standpoint, I was more afraid at that level, not thinking about what can this do day to day. And it's right before that conference. I guess it was the end of July. And going into it, and I remember you did your presentation and I was sitting there and you did one of the prompts and I was like, what? And so then I was sitting there and then you did more of the prompt and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, okay. And I was joking around with Elizabeth. I never, what those things you don't always want to say with people, like you're kind of tired and like you sit down and have this conversation. And
the conference dinner.
I booked it and there was like one seat next to you and it was like by a pole and I like made some guy move because I was like, I need to know more about this software. I mean, I like literally like stumbled next to you. I was like, okay. And then at that point, because I was answering all the questions, like we really don't use it. I had just gotten a co-pilot license, if that makes sense. Like we were really at the beginning of it. And then going through it and hearing in those roundtables with other leaders, hearing their use of it. I met one of your clients who was like, I guess he was at one of our competitors, but he was like, this thing's awesome. Like we use it for permitting. So like in my mind, I'm like, how am I going to sell this to Maury to sell to our, at that point, I'm like pulling what I'm spending on privacy. I'm like trying to make like a case for it. But we did the demo and I did it first and I was able to put in things, one of the things was a trial transcript that was thousands of pages of long, a very complicated, it was an eminent domain proceeding, talking about 3 different approaches of appraisal. I mean, and the output of it was insane. And I was just sitting there and I was inciting the pages of the trial transcript. And I was just sitting there and I was like, okay, so I got Maury and them to try it. And then we actually have some of our other, like our corporate secretary uses it. It's something where we were able to kind of quickly pick up on this is a tool that can save us a lot of time, especially in our environment of having to answer questions quickly. And because if you don't, some of these things, it's not that you don't want to answer everyone's question, but there is a list of priorities and something that's literally on fire is a bigger priority to me than if I can sell XYZ at a certain price in this state. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's a reality.
I think this is in-house, like that's in-house life. And I mean, I guess it's like, Maury made the comment at the beginning of doing 3 people's jobs and he was doing 2 of them. That's exactly right. And I remember very early in my in-house journey, somebody asked me from the law firm something to the effect of like, how do you get everything done? And, since we've got litigators here, I'm like, it seems facts not in evidence. Like that is not like you don't is kind of the thing, but you try really hard and you get like the most of the answer. Like, so in that case, I think AI can help you get there. And I guess same question for you, Maury. Like you've obviously been an attorney for a long time. You've been at the company a long time. Michele comes in, obviously, we talked about trust, but like this trial transcript example, like did you have that kind of aha moment then? And then like, how's it been since?
Well, look, I was not using AI, proudly staying away from ChatGPT and everything, saying, not needed. I'm smart. I can do my work. And Michele showed me, so I figured it's really, frankly, the easy prompt that you have, which I love, because without that, I don't know how much it would help me because I wouldn't know what to do. But I love how I type in like, please redline this document and then press easy prompt. And it's like, did you mean you wanted to know these 40 things? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to know those 40 things. So the value there, I mean, I used it. My son's a film student and it was able to like quickly, he's like, I'm in such and such county in nowhere, New York. And they say I need a permit and the sheriff's not letting us film. And I quickly looked at GCAI on a Sunday and it got my answer right away. It told me where the film office was and everything, confirmed you didn't need a permit. They talked to the sheriff. The sheriff said, you need a permit. He has a gun. He's in charge. So they waited and got this non-existent permit the next week. But, you can answer so many questions easily. I don't use it all the time. Like I look and some weeks I don't use it at all. And other times I do, but it's convenient to have. and definitely helpful, certainly to pick apart documents early on. So I found I like efficiency. I'm an efficiency guy. So it definitely helps with that, even for just like, preparing an initial draft of a chart or whatever, even if I'm going to read a full document and take all my notes, then I don't have to type most of it because it's already typed most of it for me. So it's been a very quick and good journey. And I've been recommending tools to people since then.
I love that. I love that. Michelle, I guess you also have kids. I have kids. Anything you're thinking about with AI in the next generation? You've each talked about training folks. Like, I want to work at GPM after what you've said, but how do you think about, now in the AI era, like, if junior attorneys use it, are they skipping the part where they're learning how to send certified mail, or how do you think about it for the future?
Well, AI can't send certified mail. Well, I
There
mean,
you
I guess
go.
that is one thing that will never go away as far as notice is concerned. So, I mean, I think that is a rite of passage that some may never have to do. But then again, there are instances where, you're trying to get something out. It's a snow day, you never know. But so everyone should learn how to send a certified letter. That's my first advice. But I think for AI, the easy prompts are great, but once, when you're going in for more detailed questions, it's really only as good as a user. There has to be a knowledge base for the person because you do have to verify the results. I mean, you have to make sure. I heard today we had a consultant in and an attorney got slapped with a $25,000 sanction for preparing response to a motion with AI and didn't verify the facts. I don't think it was GCAI, but like the point is it wasn't, but it's still your work
Yeah,
product.
no, no. I mean,
So
there's up to 300 cases now on that question. And that's actually something that we thought about is like, okay, with easy prompt, and you and Maury each explain situations where, okay, you're checking on the permit thing, you're clicking through on the law, we're allowing you to verify. Like, I do think that's something where our the demands on us as attorneys actually go up, right? So like the question, or in this case, you get asked a pricing question or you get asked something, like the consequence of that is your business is doing a real thing, right? Your son's filming your thing, or you're launching a product, or you're responding to emotion, or whatever it is. And you have to bring that in. I think that's exactly right, Michelle.
yeah, it's but also I think being able for, young attorneys, I think it's making sure there is I don't think there's it replacing having to learn things, maybe it's just because I'm mean and I think everyone should have to like go through and have someone review their red lines like I had to do with Maury, who would sit in a room and draft contracts all day long if he could and be happy. And like, I mean, if like he marks up his like doctor's office's forms, I'm pretty sure.
I
So
love
like
it. I love it.
Well,
I
of
so
love it.
course I do.
so there's a part of but I think for some of the more nuanced, like legal, indemnification, reps and warranty, I think that there is a level where, a brand new attorney that hasn't, had any interactive experience, I think that it's important, but then it's important for it not to be a crutch, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Where it's not
Yes.
just to save time, but it's one thing for it to be able to save a lot of time, but it's another thing for it to be, "Oh, well, then this must be right because 'cause I'm not even really sure." You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. It's like getting you to the answer. So we've seen a lot of folks use it where it's benchmarking, or in your trial case of like, okay, there were three different ways to look at this eminent domain. How do we expand on those arguments? Using AI to basically expand the universe of what you're looking at and get to that right answer, or to a hardened answer, as opposed to not doing the analysis yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah, or just gathering. I mean, you mentioned eminent domain, but we'll get a notice in, we have 1,300 locations in how many states, Maury? I mean, so you're dealing with all the different DOTs and you'll get a notice in, there's a zoning hearing for such and such project, and being able to just pull it in and say, please review the attached notice and review the project and advise the potential impacts for convenience stores located in this general area. And when I say to you, like, I mean, and it's not always going to be perfect, but enough to make it where, I mean, that's not even just an attorney being able to do it. I mean, like you'd have to have people from your facilities. Like it's a whole different thing. So I think young attorneys being able to recognize the use of AI in those instances and for certain things, I think it's great because it saves a lot of time, or it at least gives people enough information to take it to the bigger group and say, here you go, you need to attend the zoning hearing.
Love that.
And then ask it to summarize it in a business format that short and succinct, that explains the issues clearly. Because sometimes lawyers write too much. And I had one boss once say, you need to just write it in crayon, keep it simple. And so my favorite is when I say, can you please summarize this in a succinct way for leadership to be able to see the 4 key points?
I love that. The write it in crayon is so good. I got the similar advice where write an email on your phone specifically because it's going to be read on your phone, where it's
Okay.
like doing
Yeah.
that. And like AI can do that perfectly. I haven't asked it that way, but you're absolutely right of like telling it exactly what to do. And that's the wisdom that that your business people are going to receive it in that way and tell them. I love that. All right. So let's do one more question on careers. Maury, obviously, you're a trusted advisor. You've grown this team. You've grown to 1,300 locations, became a Fortune 500 company. What's your advice for people who want to get to where you are?
Luck is part of it. I mean, look, you grow with the business and really make yourself valuable. It's a little hard for me to say that because I came in as the general counsel. I came in with a client that I had been working with for 8 years. Before I came in, I helped them buy this business as outside counsel. I came in during the deal, but it's make yourself valuable, speaking, getting known in circles, conferences, etc. And unfortunately, like other jobs, sometimes you have to move to another job, right, to take the top seat. Because there's only one top seat, and there are people below it, and even if it's not a pyramid, it's a few. I can tell you, I got called maybe 10 years ago for a position, and they were looking for a deputy general counsel, and they said the general counsel is going to retire and they want to prep someone for that position. And that was at least 10 years ago. And I know because it's a large company, that general counsel is still there.
Man, wow, that recruiter. Well, I do think karma comes around, and that recruiter is gonna not be as good after
Yeah,
that.
well,
But
I
wow.
don't know if that general counsel just fell in love with their job and was going to retire legit and didn't, or what. I don't know if they've gone through multiple deputy GCs, but you kind of never know, especially if you're at a great company, right? Like the person at the top of a really great company is probably going to want to stay there for a long time. But the next levels are hopefully enjoying their job and very successful at what they're doing and bringing in new things and working with new departments, right? Michele regularly meets with heads of multiple departments and knows what's going on and, doesn't have to deal with some of what I have to deal with, and gets to do sometimes more of the fun stuff, but sometimes more of the stuff I don't want to deal with either.
I love that. Awesome. All right, let's go to the lightning round. Couple quick answers. So, Michele, a book, podcast, or concept that changed how you lead, or that you'd want to share with listeners. So, a book, podcast, or concept that has inspired you.
A book, Leaders Eat Last.
How about you, Maury?
Uh-huh.
You.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I don't know. I read a lot when I can, and I try to take little nuggets from everything. I don't have a particular, like, this book is on my bookshelf and I refer to it all the time type thing. I mean, if someone wants to pay me for a plug, I can put it in an edit of this, but otherwise, I'm just going to go with lots of different things I've read.
Awesome. Any belief about leadership that you used to hold and no longer do? Either of you can take that one.
We're both sound.
Y'all are
Well,
difficult.
That it
Or something that surprised you as the company has grown. Maybe that's an easier way. Either your company or your team has grown.
think that the satisfaction in seeing people that are, as our team's grown, seeing people get to take on roles and learn new skill sets and really see their careers change in a significant way, and seeing kind of a fear, in the beginning where we said, we think you'd be great at this. And just kind of, I think getting to see people take on roles and being able to take on things that they didn't think were possible, but that, Maury and I both were like, that person is completely capable of doing this.
Love that. And that story of somebody going from a 30-year career to then taking on compliance and taking on AML, which is super complicated. I mean, it's incredible, super inspiring. I love that. All right. Anything else you'd want to leave our listeners with? You've built this incredible department, growing company, 26 acquisitions, 1,300 licenses, 1,300 locations. Like, I'm just like this. I can't even with the stats. Enough life-changing deals to to not even be able to remember or think of one. Anything you want listeners to take away or to know about you or your team?
I'll just say, okay,
Go ahead.
you want me to
Yeah,
go?
you go ahead.
The answer is yes. Look, and I know people can't always do that, but when you're working virtually, if you don't have to be on camera, I can't multitask. No one really can. Some people pretend they can. I get distracted by emails, whatever. I do my best focusing, taking a call if I don't have to be on camera, either on the Peloton or I'm folding laundry and it's kind of I'm doing something, but it gets me distracted. Taking a walk, whatever. Not everyone has that opportunity, but if you can, for me, it just helps me focus and I get something else useful done. Now I've learned to don't go hard on the Peloton because then when you have to speak, people are like, "You're having a heart attack. Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, just walked up the stairs."
Or cook.
I love that. I love that. How about you, Michelle?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is an opportunity could be sitting in front of you and you don't even realize it. Instead of just shutting off, I mean, I could have just said when I went home that day, I was like, I don't want to move to Richmond. And I'm not saying everyone's in that same boat, but just being open to what is presented to you and especially if something doesn't work out that way, it doesn't mean that there's not something that's around there, but it's also I got clear before I came here. I was like, what are the things that matter to me? And it was like, I want to have a voice that's listened to. I want to have a boss, that has my back. I want to have it be, these are the things and kind of coming up with your own core set of, what really matters to you. That
Love
was
that.
helpful for me. And I think it's important for people to kind of know what it is and it may be some people just want to make a ton of money and they don't, I want to be at the top and it doesn't matter. But I think being honest with yourself of what you want your career to look like, even at the next step, is important.
And that may change over time. I remember an associate I worked with at the law firm. I mean, I was at a firm that kind of was mid-sized firm in the particular city we were in. And you were really, even at a junior level, the main client contact. And he moved for a few years and then he came back, but he moved to a different large firm for a few years. And he said, I just want to be a cog in the machine for a few years. I don't want to be the one on call all the time and the only one holding the client. I want to, even if I'm going to work hard, just kind of do my simple thing, do my piece, and then go home and be with my family. And then I can come back and be strategic again. So, you can take certain things and then move on, but you'll hopefully learn from every experience you have.
And it changes as your life cycle changes, there's different phases. And I think just being honest with what you are looking for is important.
I love that. Thank you both for this conversation. Your collective story is such a clear reminder. You built leadership over time. You talked about courage, about having your priorities. It's just been such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Awesome. That was my conversation with Maury Bricks and Michele Murray. Their journey shows how strong teams are built. They talked about trust. We had some great dry humor, consistent choices, one foot in front of the other, and leaders willing to evolve. You heard that incredible story about AI and their team, how they've grown, just the career arcs of their team members. Incredible. Follow CZ and Friends wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about how legal teams are using AI to work smarter and lead with impact, visit gc.ai. We'll see you next time.